The Iron Coffin, Deff Dread Warhammer 40K. If they seal you inside a dread, the worst thing is not the pain. The worst thing is what comes after the roar dies. The dark remains. The body is gone. The brain is still awake. And somewhere outside the coffin, someone is already waiting to wake you for the next slaughter. Silence? No, that is not exact enough. Emptiness. Silence is when you can hear yourself, your breathing, the beat of your heart, the grind of your teeth. Here there is nothing. Absolute dense pitch blackness. I do not breathe. I have no teeth to grind. The heart, if it is still somewhere inside me, beats so deep inside this iron mountain that I cannot feel it. Sometimes I think they cut it out long ago. Sometimes I think it simply does not want me to hear it. I do not know how long this has lasted. Days, weeks. I have no eyes that blink, no muscles that go numb. Only this darkness inside the hull and a dull, aching feeling that I am here, somewhere between alive and rusted. Sometimes the grots come. Little green stinking things. They crawl over me like bedbugs over a corpse, scraping something on my armor, tightening bolts. I feel the vibration in the places where wires have grown into my nerves. One of them, the boldest, has taken to sitting on my shoulder. I hear him chew mushrooms. A quiet, wet munching passes through the hull and reaches my brain, the only sound in the whole day. I wait for it. I hate myself for waiting for it. Once that grot dropped something inside through a crack in my shoulder plate. A little stone maybe, or a squig nut. It rolled along the inner plates, bounced over tubes and wires and went quiet somewhere near my reactor. I listened to that sound the way I once listened, standing on a cliff, to the roar of a wog before the charge. Greedily, hungrily. That is what it means to be a Deff Dread between battles. You are a coffin, a metal coffin packed with meat and wires standing in the dark corner of a hangar. You do not sleep because sleep has been taken from you. You are not awake because there is nothing left for you to be awake with. You simply exist. A piece of iron with a brain someone forgot inside. Back when I had legs and arms, when I ran across the field and shouted "Wog" with the boys, I used to think, if only I could become a dread. If only I could become the biggest, the loudest, the most terrifying. I watched Dread stomp past our camp, 4 meters of rusty, smoking, clacking iron, and I thought it was the greatest thing that could happen to an orc. To be a living fortress. To stomp so hard the ground jumped. To spit fire for hundreds of meters. Nobody told me about the silence. The mech who built me was called Maddox Sparkbite. He got the name because he liked to test wires for sparks by pressing them to his tongue to see if the current was running. Maddox was bad moons, same as me. Rich, cunning, always draped in gold chains and teeth. So many bits of metal hung from his apron that when he walked he rattled like a sack of wrenches. He loved his work. He loved it too much. I volunteered. I want that clear. Nobody forced me. Nobody dragged me to the slab. I came to Maddox after the fight with the Goths on Blackfin. Both my legs had been crushed. A knob caught them in a power claw, and from the knees down there was only pulp. Dr. Grimshaw, a filthy, grinning pain boy and a real butcher, stitched on some kind of prosthetics, but they never worked right. I limped. I fell behind. In war, an orc who falls behind is a dead orc who simply has not been informed yet. I had seen 3 dozen good fights already. Not old, but with 2 broken legs and no future. Maddox was sitting in his hangar, soldering something that smelled of burned squig. I stood in front of him and said, "I want into a dread." He looked at me, lifted his welding goggles to his forehead, smiled wide with golden teeth, and said, "All right then, but know this. There is no road back. I stuff you in there and that is all. You are there forever. No eating, no drinking, but you will be the biggest, meanest, loudest thing around." I nodded. "And what about the waiting?" I asked. "The boys say it is bad between battles." Maddox waved a hand. "Nonsense. You will sleep a bit, like in a womb, only iron, beautiful." He was lying, or he did not understand. A mech cannot understand what it is like to be inside the thing he builds. He sees wires, gears, pistons. He does not see the darkness that presses down when you are alone in that can, without sound, without light, without smell. And the only thing you can do is think. Thinking is the worst thing an ordinary boy can do when there is no fight within reach. We were not made for it. Mechs, yes. Their heads work differently. They can pick at gears for hours and enjoy it. Bosses are cunning, spinning schemes. That is also a kind of work for the brain. But a simple boy, his brain is hot and fast, like an engine idling too hard. When a boy has nothing to do, he starts going mad. He fights the neighbor, breaks furniture, beats grots, anything so he does not have to sit still. Now put that brain inside a 4-meter iron box and switch everything off. There was a time, in the first days after the operation, when the body still hurt and the wires had not grown in properly, I talked to myself, out loud through the speakers, or what counted as out loud, a hoarse scrape that my speakers gave off without orders, only from nerve noise in the wires. When the grots heard it, they ran away, then came back. Curious vermin. I told myself about the fights on Blackfin, how we went through the swamp knee-deep in yellow sludge, with dead squigs and the corpses of those who drowned before us floating in it. How our knob, Tucker One Ear, led us on, hammering the water with his choppa and shouting something about Gork loving us, and whoever drowned was not loved by Gork. How we reached dry ground and ran into the Goths, black and angry, with choppas the size of doors, and how the hacking began. I told it once, then twice, then 10 times, then 50. After the 50th time the story began to change. The swamp grew deeper, the Goths grew larger, my wounds grew worse. By the 100th time I was no longer sure there had ever been a battle on Blackfin, or whether I had invented it just to fill the darkness with something. That is what other orcs call running in. The settling. It sounds harmless. In truth, you slowly lose your mind, piece by piece, the way rust eats metal. At first I counted the beats of my reactor, then lost count, then tried to remember battles, every blow, every shot. Then the memories tangled. I am no longer sure I fought on Blackfin. Maybe it was Crag Prime. Maybe I made it all up. One day I heard steps, heavy, certain, and a hoarse voice with a metallic whistle, like someone who smokes exhaust fumes instead of cigars. Maddox. Something crashed against my hull. Once. Again. A sledgehammer. I felt the vibration down to the brain, and it was good. Gork and Mork, it was good. Like a mouthful of water in the middle of a desert. Hey, Brutus, he roared, pounding on my faceplate. Wake up, lazy can. We have work, work. I wanted to scream with joy, but my speakers were not yet on. Only a hoarse, grinding moan came out of me, as if someone dragged a rusty nail over a sheet of tin. It was time to sing. The operation. I will tell you about the operation, because otherwise it is not clear how I ended up in this box and why I have not gone completely cracked yet. Maddox's table was not a table. It was a piece of ship hull laid across 4 promethium barrels. On it were stains, brown, green, black, blood, oil, acid, all mixed together. Beside it stood a workbench buried in tools. Pliers, a welding rig, something like a drill, and the thing Maddox called a nerve probe. A thin needle on a wire, connected to a thinker the size of my head. A big iron box, what humans call a cogitator, dragged by Maddox from some captured ship. The thinker cracked and sparked, and symbols flickered on its screen that no human would understand, and no orc either, including Maddox himself. He did not work by science. He worked by instinct. Something inside every mech tells him which wire goes where. An ancient thing put into our genes by those we call the brain boys. Dr. Grimshaw arrived first. A nasty, grinning pain boy, huge even for an orc, with an apron smeared in things I prefer not to think about. His face shone. He was happy. Pain boys are always happy when someone gives them someone to cut. Lie down, he said. Will there be any painkiller? I asked. Grimshaw looked at Maddox. Maddox looked at Grimshaw. Both of them burst out laughing. There will be a painkiller, Grimshaw said, taking out a sledgehammer. 1 hit and you feel nothing. The hammer hit my temple. The world blinked like a lamp with a bad contact. After that, scraps, fragments. I woke and fell away again. I remember the smell, scorched flesh and engine oil. I remember the sound, the whine of a saw and the wet chewing noise when something living was separated into pieces. I remember pain. It flashed like lightning every time the needle of the nerve probe entered my spine. 1, 2, 7, 23. Every stab was one more wire between me and the machine, one more thread tying my brain to the reactor, the pistons, the servo motors. They opened my skull and put in an iron plate with sockets, a skull plug, Maddox called it. Through that, my thoughts, or whatever remained of them, go straight into the Dread control system. I think step, and 4 tons of metal take a step. I think fire, and the scorcher spits promethium 30 meters. They cut off my arms. The legs, what was left of them, too. They wrapped my spine in wires like bandages. Lungs, who knows? Grimshaw jammed pumps and filters into me. And now I float in fluid that feeds me, cools me, and keeps the brain from dying. When a pump stutters, I feel it as if a wet rag has been pressed to my throat. Foul, dreadful, but it does not last long. The filters cough and start pushing again. The heart, I think they left the heart. At least something inside me beats when I am afraid, and I still get afraid. When the procedure was done, they put me inside. My hull is 4 meters high, built from armor plates stripped off a wrecked Lemon Russ, ship bulkheads, and somebody's bumpers. It was painted in a hurry. Yellow for the clan, red stripes to make it go faster. At least, we believe red makes things faster, and as long as we believe it, it works. Inside it is hot, tight, and smells of oil. I do not fit. What is left of me is squeezed into a cocoon of wires and tubes, flooded with the same fluid that either feeds my tissue or marinates it. The visor is a narrow slit in the faceplate. The lens was looted and cracked. The filter stuck on red, and Maddox said, "Fine, red is prettier, so it is better." So it stayed. Through it I see the world in red, always red. 4 arms. Upper left a scorcher. Upper right a big shooter, a paired heavy caliber gun. Below 2 claws, power-driven hydraulic, with a saw on the left and a crusher on the right. I feel each of them like my fingers. When I close a claw, I feel pressure, the resistance of the material. When I start the saw, the vibration passes through the hull, through the wires, through my spine, and reaches the brain. A pleasant, itching vibration. On my back are 3 exhaust pipes. They smoke black when the reactor works. On my shoulders are spikes, and on the spikes are trophies, helmets, skulls, a piece of banner. I do not remember where they came from. Maddox put them on while I was out. For beauty, probably. Oil always leaks from the armor joints. Maddox says that is normal. A dread sweats, so it is alive. I believe him, because if it is not normal, there is still nothing to be done. And there he stood over me, or rather under me, because now I was 1.5 meters taller than him. He tapped my chest plate with the sledgehammer, checking the sound. The boom went through the whole hull. "Reactor," he shouted to the grots. Something clicked deep inside me, behind ribs that were no longer there. Warmth. First light, then stronger, then heat. The reactor woke. Heat crawled through pipes, through wires, through whatever remained of my body. I felt the fluid around my brain warm. The filters spun up. The pumps began to chew faster. Sensors came alive one by one. Sound first. The world burst into my brain as a wall of noise, clang, shouting, engine roar, wind howl. After weeks of silence, it was like a fist to the jaw. I would have squeezed my eyes shut, but I had nothing to squeeze shut. Smell came second. Not exactly smell. The chemanalyzer in my visor read the air and translated it into sensations. Promethium, sweat, fungus, machine oil, squig dung, powder smoke, home. Sight came last. The visor slit lit red, and I saw the hangar. A ceiling of torn canvas and tin. Shafts of light from holes in the walls. Grots running from my feet like roaches. Maddox, small, dirty, grinning with the sledgehammer on his shoulder. And me huge. My shadow covered him completely. My speakers came alive. From my throat, a tin box with an amplifier, a sound tore free. A roar, hoarse, rattling, monstrous. A roar that made grots drop to their knees. The first thing I said after waking was, "Let there be thunder." Maddox giggled and hit my leg with the hammer. "It works," he yelled. "I am a genius, a zogging genius." I took my first step. The hangar floor cracked under my foot. 4 tons of iron, meat, and anger swayed forward, and the world, the whole world, trembled. The first thing I understood when I left the hangar was that I had forgotten what the sky looked like. Yellow murky, drawn over with smoke from 1,000 fires and exhaust pipes. The WOG camp of Harlan Skullbox spread to the horizon. Mountains of rusty junk, skin tents, workshops, squig pens, and everywhere, orcs. Thousands of orcs, small, large, green, roaring, fighting, eating, sleeping in mud. My people. And all of them made way for me. That feeling. Before I had been just a boy, one of many. A green muzzle in a crowd of green muzzles. I shoved with elbows for a place by the pot, ducked blows from the knobs, pressed against the wall when the boss passed. An ordinary orc, expendable. Now it was different. Now I walked and the ground bent. Boys jumped out of the way, grots squealed and hid behind stones. Knobs, even knobs, followed me with looks in which there was something new. Orcs do not fear, but there is a leaden-heavy respect you can earn only one way, by being the most dangerous thing in the tribe. My right claw, the one with the crusher, clicked on its own just from pleasure. Others walked beside me. 2 kilocans, smaller than me, squat on short legs with round cabins and guns sticking out. Inside each was a grot, a living grot, hammered in there by a runtherd strapped with belts and fear, steering the machine through the same wires and needles as I did. Only the grot had it worse. He did not have my strength, my armor. He was a can with a gun, disposable. A kilocan rarely survives more than 2 or 3 battles. One of them, the one on the right, turned his cabin to me. His lens glowed dull green. "Hey, big one," came a thin, rattling voice from the speaker. "Will it be loud today?" "Louder than you can stand, tin box," I answered. Something cracked inside him. Laughter, probably. "Smashing," he said. "I am Niles. Remember, when I kill someone, tell the boss it was Niles." I did not tell him. The boss did not care about kilocan names. Let him believe. Let him go to battle with fire in his little grot heart. He would need that fire, very soon. On the right side of the column stretched the mech camp. Something always burned there, sparked or exploded. I saw a young mech, barely a lad, with tusks only just sprouting, trying to weld a rocket launcher to the roof of a truck. The launcher would not hold, the truck leaned, and the mech shouted at his grot helper, who was holding the part by the wrong end. A familiar picture. It left me hollow. I looked at his green hands, at his fingers holding the welding torch, and remembered my fingers, green and thick with dirt under the nails. I remembered gripping a choppa, a tight, easy grip, the handle settling into the palm like part of you. I remembered eating. A fat piece of squig meat, hot, leaking juice, fingers shining with grease, licking them, the taste salty, sharp, alive. Now I have claws, stronger than any hands, but they do not feel grease, they do not feel heat, only pressure and the resistance of material. I shook the hull. Enough. No need to soften like a grot in rain. Beyond the mech camp were the squig pens. Hundreds of creatures, large and small, squealing, biting, eating one another. Their runtherds, orc herdsmen with long sticks and shock rods, beat the fences, trying to keep order. A fat runtherd in a leather apron saw me and saluted with his stick. I rocked the hull in reply, the closest thing to a nod I could manage. Then the forges. Open furnaces, heat over them visible even through my visor. The air trembled and swam. A furnace is a hot thing, and still beside my reactor it would seem like a lighter. Orc hammerers, bare to the waist, shining with sweat, beat anvils, making choppas, points, and armor scraps. The rhythm of their blows mixed with the stomp of the column and became something like a song. Rough, crooked, ancient. One hammerer, old and one-eyed, with arms as thick as my exhaust pipes, stopped and stared at me. Then he spat into the furnace and said to someone nearby, "Because of ugly beasts like that, our work never gets less. Breaks everything and we have to fix it." I would have smiled if I could. The column stretched out. Ahead went trucks, heavy, packed with boys, barrels sticking out and banners flapping. Behind them buggies, light and quick, engines roaring so hard the air shook. Then us, Deff Dreads and cans, the heavy step, joint scrape, metal clatter. Behind us infantry, a sea of green bodies in patched armor with choppas and shootas, yelling and shoving as they walked. The boys sang, or what orcs call singing. A rhythmic roar broken by fists pounding shields. We go, we go, we go, we smash. Whoever does not run gets eaten. A stupid song, primitive. But when 5,000 throats roar it at once, and the earth shakes under the march, and smoke crawls, and banners snap in the wind, something inside catches fire. Something ancient, set into every cell of my body by the brain boys millions of years ago. Wog energy. It flowed through the crowd like electricity through wires. I felt it even through metal and tubes. An itch where fingers used to be. Heat where the chest used to be. Our weird boys, psychers, mad shamans of the Wog felt it too. I saw one in the column, skinny, twitching, eyes glowing green. He walked squeezed between two big knobs holding him by the elbows. Not from care, from fear. When Wog energy builds too much, a weird boy's head can burst in the plain sense, and a wave of psychic force can melt the brains of everyone within 20 meters. That is why they keep them held tight and away from dreads. I do not need my brain melted. I need it working. But the energy came, thick, hot, green. I bathed in it like warm oil. My servomotors ran smoother, the claws clicked brighter. Even the visor seemed to show more clearly. Orc magic. It does not care about wires and transistors. It works because we believe it works. And while 5,000 orcs believe red goes faster, red goes faster. We marched toward the city, an imperial city called Carrick or Caracas, or whatever the humans named it. Fortified, walled, full of humans with laser rifles. To them, a fortress. To us, a gift box that only needed crushing. I lifted my head. The red sky flickered behind the visor filter. The sun was dim, small, sick. A good sun, the right sun for such a day. Ahead the horizon. Beyond the horizon, thunder. Distant, barely heard, but my strengthened sensors caught it. Artillery. Imperial artillery ranging our positions. An overture. My Scorcha gurgled. The Promethium tank chained to my left arm warmed from the nearness of the reactor. A drop of fuel fell to the ground and hissed in the mud. I quickened my step. The earth groaned beneath me. Today would be a concert, and I would be the main instrument. The first shell fell 200 meters ahead. The ground jumped, and a column of mud, stones, and someone's guts rose into the sky like a dirty fountain. The shock wave rolled over me. I rocked but stayed standing. 4 tons, not so easy to move. The second shell was closer, 100 meters. The ground cracked like a shell. Fragments rattled on my armor, small, angry, like a swarm of insects. My sensors recorded multiple hits on the left shoulder plate. Damage minimal. Paint stripped. The third was very close, 50 meters. The blast pushed me back. My feet slid through mud, leaving furrows. I felt heat, real living heat, on my faceplate. A piece of shrapnel stuck in my right leg. I looked down, sticking out like a splinter. Nothing. Then something happened that I did not expect. I liked it. Every strike, every boom, every shove, it was music. Hit, boom, another hit, boom, and another. Boom, 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 rhythm. My reactor hummed louder, falling into the rhythm of the shelling the way a heart follows a drum. I walked faster. My pistons pumped harder. The exhaust pipes on my back spat out a column of black smoke, thick as a storm cloud. Around me was chaos. A truck on the left was torn open by a direct hit. Its hull, packed with boys, burst apart and green bodies flew outward like a fan. Someone screamed, someone burned, someone tried to run on one leg. A buggy ahead flipped and slid through mud, throwing sparks. Its driver, a one-eyed orc with scars instead of a face, crawled out, shook himself, and ran toward the city on his own 2 feet with a chopper in hand. Orcs, we do not stop, we do not turn back. We go forward while the legs carry us. Then we crawl. Then, if lucky, we die with a chopper in our teeth. Niles the Killican ran beside me. His little legs scurried like a beetle's. He screeched something through the speaker, but under the artillery thunder I could not make out the words. Probably Wog. A shell landed between us. The shock wave slapped Niles sideways. He toppled and rolled, clanging over stones. I stepped on. A second later I heard him rise, creak, clang, squeal, and again he ran after me. Tough little thing. We came out into the open. The wall of Carrick, gray concrete 12 meters high, rose ahead like the toothed wall of a giant skull. On it were bastions with heavy weapons. Searchlights, already useless in daylight, stuck out like chopped fingers. Along the top ran barbed wire, here and there set with imperial aquilas, double-headed eagles on poles. Some were crooked. Some had already fallen. A good sign. Between us and the wall stretched no man's land. 300 meters of flat burned ground, studded with craters from earlier shelling. Here and there stuck the skeletons of machines, someone's vehicles made unrecognizable, turned to torn metal. Several corpses, green and human, lay mixed together. Old, swollen, covered in flies. Someone had fought here before. Scouts perhaps, or a first wave that never reached the wall. We would reach it. Lasguns started working at 300 meters. Sparks flickered at me from the walls, little shooters, lasguns. Thousands of thin red beams cut the air. Infantry around me fell. One here, one there, but those were single hits. The beams clicked on my armor, leaving melted dots, blinding sensors, but they did not get inside. For me they were mosquito bites, only hot. What struck from the embrasure on the right was more serious. A heavy bolter, heavy explosive rounds that enter flesh and burst inside. Death for boys. A noticeable blow for me. A burst walked across my chest plate and I felt a string of impacts. Bam, 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 like someone beating me with a sledgehammer. One round struck the armor joint at my left shoulder. Something crunched inside. Not painful but unpleasant. Like a stone caught in a gear. A stone the size of a fist and filled with explosives. My chem analyzer reported a leak of hydraulic fluid from the left shoulder servomotor. Minor. The scorcher still worked. I aimed it at the embrasure and thought, too early, hold it. Reach the wall, then sing. Artillery was fading. We were too close to the walls. The humans feared hitting their own. Instead, everything on the wall that could shoot was shooting now. Lasguns, bolters, autocannons. Guardsmen, little things in matching helmets and coats, darted along the wall, hauling ammo boxes, shouting to each other in their thin, busy language. I saw their faces through the visor, red, twisted, wet with sweat. Fear, pure animal fear. They knew what was coming. They saw 4 meters of dirty, smoking iron hung with skulls with one burning red eye and 4 arms, and they understood. I was the last thing they would see. The wall was there, gray, cold concrete. My claws touched it and closed. The wall did not all fall, only a piece of it, 5 meters wide. Dust, rubble, clanging reinforcement rods. I went through the breach bent low. My exhaust pipes scraped the upper edge, and a rain of concrete crumbs scattered over my hull. On the other side was a street, narrow, clogged with barricades of sandbags, overturned trucks, and barbed wire. Behind the barricades were humans, many humans. Guardsmen in camouflage, lasguns ready, eyes white with terror. An officer, I knew him by the cap and scarf, shouted and waved a pistol, trying to hold his people in position. Brave, stupid, but brave. The first volley struck my chest. Dozens of lasguns at once, a spray of red beams. My armor barely warmed. The heavy bolter on the flank fired more carefully. Rounds hammered my hull, throwing sparks and paint chips. One hit the visor. The red world blinked black for a moment, then came back. A scratch on the lens. I raised my left arm. The scorcher. The blackened nozzle looked at the barricade like a finger pointing the road to hell. Dr. Grimshaw had said one thing while sewing my nerves to the flamethrower. I thought he was raving. He is always half raving. But now I understood what he meant. He said, fire is the honest weapon. It does not choose. It does not miss. It simply is like the sun. You turn it on and everything in front of you stops existing. I turned it on. A stream of promethium tore from the nozzle, thick, orange, howling, and struck the barricade. Sandbags burst like boils. The truck caught fire. Barbed wire curled like something alive and melted to drops. And the people burned. Through the visor I saw their heat shapes, bright white like stars. They ran, rolled on the ground. 1, 2, 5. They fell and did not rise. The heat shapes changed from white to yellow, from yellow to red, from red to black. A human goes out in 8 seconds. I timed it. The officer in the cap fired at me with his pistol, a las pistol, small and angry. The beams clicked on my armor, leaving melted points, not reaching inside. He stood right in front of me, one man with a pistol against 4 meters of orc dread. His men ran. He did not. I lowered the Scorcha. He stood in the dead angle, too close under the line where the nozzle could sweep. I could have crushed him with my foot. I could have. Instead, I stepped aside and passed him. I do not know why. Maybe because he reminded me of someone. Maybe because I respect those who stand when all others run. Maybe I was simply too lazy to lower the foot. He lived another 30 seconds. Then the boys pouring through the breach behind me reached him. I heard him scream, then stop. The street burned. I walked down it like a corridor inside a furnace. Fire licked my armor, but I did not feel the heat. The reactor inside me was hotter than any fire. Rubble cracked under my feet. Something soft. I tried not to think. On both sides were buildings, homes, barracks, warehouses. Humans had built a whole life here. Through broken windows I saw beds, tables, pictures on walls, children's things, toys. I had never thought about them before. Why would orcs do not think about the young of others? We grow from spores in mud and dark. The first thing we do after crawling out is fight the nearest living thing. But now, passing one window, I held my gaze there for half a second. My visor identified an object. Red on red. Nothing. I went on. War does not wait for those who stare into windows. Boys ran beside me, shouting, shooting, breaking doors, smashing windows. They climbed into houses and seconds later spilled out with loot. I could take nothing. I had no hands that could hold small things. Claws are good for breaking and crushing, but not for picking a coin from the ground. One more thing taken from me. One more small loss that itched somewhere at the bottom of my mind, like a splinter under a nail that no longer existed. A memory came uninvited, bright as a flash. Maddox's table, the smell of burning flesh. My own scream when the nerve probe went between the 4th and 5th vertebrae, and Grimshaw's voice saying, "Stop twitching, fool, or I will tear your gut." They cut off both my arms at the shoulder joints. I saw it. They did not let me go under. They needed me conscious while they connected the nerves. I saw my right arm, green, muscled, with a scar on the wrist from an old fight, lying on the floor like something foreign, like a discarded glove. A grot orderly picked it up and carried it away, probably to the pot. Then the wires, dozens of thin wires drawn from the stumps of my nerves to sockets in the dread frame. Every wire was pain. Every wire was a new arm, new steel, stronger than the old one 100 times. But by then I no longer cared. I lay on the slab, stared at the ceiling, and thought only one thing. Let it end. Let it end. Let it end. Gork and Mork. Let it end. It did not end. It had only begun. I shook my head, or rather I shook it in my mind. My head inside the dread does not move. The hull twitched a little. Ahead was an intersection. A larger barricade, an autocannon on 3 legs, a crew of 4 guardsmen. They saw me and opened fire. Shells hammered my chest plate harder than lasguns. Noticeable. One punched through the outer armor on the belly. My sensors marked the damage minor. I raised my right arm, the big shooter, time to change instruments. A big shooter has its own voice. Every weapon does if you know how to listen. The Scorcha sings low, belly deep like a humming pipe, a long howl that becomes a roar when the promethium catches. Claws strike heavy and rhythmic, boom, boom like a smith's hammer. When they close on something, crack, snap, metal shriek, a short, vicious note. The shooter chatters fast, furious, unstoppable. Ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta-ta. A machine gun is not a melody, it is rhythm. The foundation under everything else, the drum, the heartbeat of battle. I aimed it at the intersection and pressed. The vibration passed through my whole right side, through wires, through bones, through brain. Heavy caliber bullets, each the size of a grot finger, flew into the barricade like a swarm of mad steel wasps. Sandbags burst, spitting gray clouds. Barricade metal rang and bent. The autocannon crew, the first fell at once. The second managed to turn, the third and fourth ran. The third did not get far. I walked the fire after them, and bullets chased the runner, ripping up paving stones behind him. Fountains of stone dust, grit, sparks. The fourth dived around a corner and was gone. Fine, later. The cabin was heating. My temperature sensors showed 52 degrees inside the hull and rising. The fluid in which my brain floated began to bubble, or it seemed to. Hard to say. The border between what I feel and what I imagine has long since worn away. Maybe the filters were coping. Maybe my brain was already cooking and I mistook it for excitement. Not much difference. I went on firing as I moved. The big shooter ate ammunition greedily. The belt ran out of the box like a snake into a burrow. Ta-ta-ta at windows, ta-ta-ta at doors, at walls, at anything that moved. Accuracy was poor. I am an orc. We do not hit. We fill space with lead and let the enemy step into it. Niles walked beside me. His rocket launches spat rockets that flew wherever they pleased, leaving smoky spirals behind. One slammed into the wall above my head and exploded, showering me with brick chips. Niles squealed something. Maybe sorry, maybe brilliant. I did not bother making it out. The second Killican, the one on the left, had fallen behind. I looked back. He stood tilted, smoke coming from his left leg. Hit. An anti-tank mine or a grenade launcher, or maybe some mech had built him crooked and the leg decided it had done enough. He tried to walk. The leg dragged, screeched on the paving stones, throwing sparks. From the speaker came squealing. The grot inside was screaming. I turned and went on. Here everyone is on his own. The boys flowed around me like water around a rock. They ran, roared, fired into the air, into walls, into one another. Some swung nail-studded choppers. Some carried a banner, a dirty rag with a crooked face on it, Gork or Mork. I mixed them up. Nob Cragwell, huge in mega armor and covered in gold chains, went ahead of his mob, smashing barricades with blows from his power claw. Then the square opened before us. A fountain stood in the center, dry, broken, with a human statue whose head had already been knocked off. Around the fountain were strong positions, concrete blocks, bags, tank traps, heavy bolters on every corner. And through my visor I saw them. 2 hydras. Anti-air tanks on tracked hulls, dug in on the sides of the square, turrets lowered almost level for infantry for us. The hydras opened fire. 4 barrels each spat shells at a speed my brain barely processed. The sound was deafening, one endless roar drowning even my speakers. Shells tore boys apart. The line of orcs running across the square simply vanished, as if an invisible hand had rubbed out a green stripe with an eraser. One shell hit me in the chest, dead center. The impact knocked me out of step. I rocked backward, my sensors howled. Medium damage, outer armor layer breached, fragmentation damage to hydraulics. Another hit the right shoulder. The shooter jammed. The music stopped. I stood in the middle of the square under the fire of 2 hydras, with a jammed machine gun and an ammunition belt twisted around the feed. Shells hammered me. Bam, 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 like the fists of a mad boxer. Paint flew in flakes. Oil leaked from holes. My left visor cracked, half my view disappeared. Niles burst from an alley. His Killican dashed toward the nearer hydra, waving its claw. A rocket from his launcher hit a concrete block beside the crew. The guardsmen serving the weapon outside scattered. I used that second. I smashed the right claw against the big shooter box. Good old orc repair. The belt jerked, the mechanism coughed and started again. Ta-ta-ta. I covered the second hydra with a long burst. Bullets hammered its turret, barrels, hull. The tank shuddered. The driver must have decided to reverse. Too late. My heavy rounds broke through the vision slit and something inside popped. Smoke, then flame. The hydra died, leaning on a broken track. Niles reached the first. His claw, small but sharp, grabbed the turret barrel and tore. The hydra twitched, shrieked, and fell silent. Niles squealed in triumph. Then quietly, plainly, without warning, a shaped charge grenade from a hand launcher struck him from a 3rd-floor window. The grenade entered the side of his cabin, burned through the thin armor, and exploded inside. The Killican stopped, swayed. Thick black smoke poured from the cracks in its hull. The eye lens blinked. Green, black, green. Then it went out. He fell to his knees slowly, like a tired worker sitting on the floor after a long shift, then rolled onto his side with a crash I heard even through the cannon fire. Something dark and thick leaked from the broken cabin. Blood and oil mixed into one fluid. The grot inside Niles probably died at once. A shaped charge burns armor with a focused jet of hot metal. He probably did not suffer. The boys flowed around his fallen hull without slowing. One jumped over him. Another tripped, swore, and ran on. To them, Niles was only a piece of iron that no longer moved, expended, written off. Next. Remember, he had said, Niles. His name was Niles. He wanted the boss to know his name. The boss would not know. No one would know but me. The only living memory of a grot named Niles was a rusty walking box with a rattling brain. I turned and went on. In war there is no time to stand over the dead. The dead understand that. They came when we thought we had won. The square was ours. Barricades crushed, hydras silent. Boys were busy in the buildings, dragging out anything that shone and finishing off those who hid. Nob Cragwell stood by the fountain and shouted that he now owned the city, and anyone who disagreed could kiss his claw. I stood at the edge of the square and repaired myself, which means I hit my jammed joint with a claw until it moved again. Crude but effective. Oil still leaked from holes. Left visor cracked and cloudy. Scorcher working. Shooter working badly. Claws working. Reactor hot but stable. I was at 70%. Enough. Then I heard a sound that pulled my wires tight as strings. An engine, heavy, very heavy. And behind it footsteps, not orc footsteps, soft, dull steps of ceramite boots on stone, measured, certain. From the side avenue they appeared, space marines of the Adeptus Astartes, giants in blue armor with golden eagles on their shoulders, ultramarines. There were 10 of them, a tactical squad, bolters, plasma melta. They moved like one creature, smooth, quiet, deadly. Ahead walked a sergeant with a chainsword. His helmet carried a red crest. And behind them, from the shadow of the avenue, came him. A dreadnought, an Imperial Dreadnought, a sarcophagus machine with a half-dead space marine sealed inside metal like me, but different. They had put him into that box not from greed and stupidity, but from reverence. He was too valuable to die. His experience, his memory, his skill, all kept inside like a sacred relic. When a space marine is killed but not completely, when what remains of a hero is too ruined for healing but too important for death, they place him in a sarcophagus, and he fights on for centuries. His hull was rectangular, geometric, clean, a true war machine, blue, polished, with golden symbols of his order. On the left arm, an assault cannon. On the right, a power fist with a storm bolter built into it. On the hull were prayer scrolls, purity seals, and a name engraved in gold. Brother Edmund. 3 centuries of service. 3 centuries. The dead one inside him was older than any orc I had known. He turned to me. His optical sensors, 2 blue lights in the helmet slits, stared at me. I stared at him. The square froze. Boys stopped looting. Knobs stopped roaring. Even grots went quiet. It was one of those moments that happen on a battlefield once in a life, when from thousands of fighting bodies something suddenly crystallizes, separate, personal, between two. I knew the boys watched, the knobs watched, the whole zogging wog watched, and I did not care because before me stood an equal. For the first time in all my existence in this can, an equal. 2 dreads. 2 walking coffins, 2 pilots sewn into metal, stripped of arms, legs, life in the usual sense. 1 orc, rusty, yellow, crooked, leaking oil. 1 imperial, blue, clean, hung with prayers. 1 made in a few hours from scrap. The other built by masters of Mars to patterns 10,000 years old. We were the same, and we were utterly different. He struck first. The assault cannon thundered, and a stream of shells hit me like a fist. I staggered back. My hull sang from the impacts, dozens of hits in a second. The right shoulder plate blew apart. Spikes with trophies flew to the ground. One bolt pierced the joint below my neck and exploded inside. I felt something burst near my spine. A wire, a tube, or a piece of me. I answered with the shooter. Bullets rattled against his blue armor, but his armor, Gork and Mork, his armor was another sort. My bullets left dents and scratches on the polished paint. I did not aim at the main hull, but at joints, servos, armpits, the places even ceramite does not like being hit. Little things broke. Sparks jumped. Not much, but enough to prove he was not invincible. Fine, not with shooter alone. I surged forward. 4 tons of iron gathered speed. 2 steps, 3, 4, and I slammed into him. The collision of 2 dreads is a sound that cannot be described. Clangor, thunder, metal shriek like 2 trains crashing. Only the trains are alive and angry. My claws caught his hull. The left one with the saw bit into the joint of his right shoulder where armor plates met around cables. The saw howled, throwing sparks from blue ceramic. His power fist came down on my chest and I flew back 3 meters. My feet carved furrows in the paving stones. Gork, what a hit. I straightened. He came toward me slowly, inexorable. His storm bolter fired a short burst. Bolts dug into my belly. I answered with the scorcher. A stream of promethium washed over him, yellow, smoking, roaring. The prayer scrolls on his hull caught and curled. Purity seals blackened, but he walked through fire, through smoke, through flame. His blue armor darkened but did not burn through. He was stronger, he was tougher, he was better, and I did not care. I threw myself at him again. Both claws, upper arms too, all 4 limbs caught his hull. The saw shrieked, biting into the joint between head and shoulder where cables and servomotors ran. His power fist hit me again and again, side, head, chest. My faceplate cracked. The visor blinked. I lost sensor after sensor. Temperature inside 70 degrees. The fluid around the brain churned. Filters wheezed. But the saw chewed slowly, stubbornly, viciously. It reached something, wires, tubes, a mechanism, and his assault cannon died. The barrels froze. He jerked, trying to throw me off. Now you know, I roared through the speaker, and the square drowned in the rattle and rasp of my voice. Now you know what Brutus Ironside is, Iron Corpse. His fist came down on my head, the faceplate tore away. The red world vanished. Half my sensors went dead. I was blind on the left side. I squeezed the claw harder. Something inside him crunched, something important. From his speaker came a voice, quiet, calm, old. Zeno's brother Edmund said, "You will be destroyed." His power fist, wrapped in the blue glow of its energy field, drove into my right side. The right side, where once there had been a rib or 2 or 5. Now wires and the remaining ribs of the frame. The fist passed through my armor like a knife through fungus, and the energy field burned everything it touched. Wires, tubes, part of my reactor. I felt that if I had lungs, I would have said the breath had been knocked out of me. If I had eyes, the world would have gone dark. If I had hands, they would have trembled. But I had none of that, so I only registered the facts. Right side lost. Hydraulic line of lower right arm ruptured, crusher claw dead. It opened and hung like a severed branch, 3 arms of 4, his fist pulled free. From my side spilled sparks, oil, torn wires. The inner heat became unbearable. The reactor strained at the limit, trying to compensate for the breach. The fluid in which my brain floated boiled. Pumps choked, filters ground. I heard them or felt them at the edge of perception. Somewhere at the rim of thought came the fact that if the filters stopped, the brain would cook in a minute. It came and went. No time. Around us the space marines fought the boys. Bolters boomed, chainswords screamed, orcs roared, Astartes killed with the method of machines better than machines. I had no room for them. The dreadnought Edmund stepped back, raised his power fist. On its clenched fingers hung a piece of my plating. Then he came at me again. I rushed to meet him, not because I had a plan. An orc has no plan. An orc has impulse. Hot, red, blind. Wog energy rising from the depths, from the place where there are no wires and no tubes, from the essence of green skin itself, carrying you forward like a wave carries a chip of wood. My left claw, the one with the saw, struck his head. The saw screamed, carving a fountain of sparks from blue ceramite. His optics flickered. Scorcha. I forced the last liters from the tank and washed his left side. Promethium flared, and his power fist jerked for 1 second. Some servomotor inside had not withstood the heat. 1 second, it was enough. I leaned into him with all my mass. 4 tons against 4 tons. My feet dug into the paving stones, and the pistons of my legs, old, creaking, leaking oil, gave everything they had. He rocked. His feet scraped over the stone. He rocked again. A machine that had stood for 300 years. A machine that had guarded the Imperium's wars against legions of enemies. Another step, another shove, the saw on my claw. I pressed it into his throat, into the joint between head and hull, where cables thicker than fingers ran from the sarcophagus to the optics. I pushed, pushed, pushed. Steel shrieked against steel, sparks white and blinding. His storm bolter fired into my belly. Bolts tore my inner plating, and I felt fragments scratch the capsule in which my brain lay. Close, too close. Then his power fist found me again. Left side. This time the blow bent my hull like a tin can. The Scorcha tore away together with the arm. It flew across the square, scattering promethium, and fell near the fountain, spitting fire one last time. 2 arms of 4. Systems screamed. No, they did not scream, they flashed red. Temperature critical, hydraulic pressure critical, frame integrity critical, reactor overheating, visor damaged 80%. I saw the world through a narrow strip of red, like through a squinting eye. 2 arms, 1 claw with the saw, 1 big shooter that no longer fired, the belt twisted beyond repair. I stood before him and he stood before me, 2 cripples, 2 maimed things in iron boxes. We both wanted the same thing, a fight. A real, honest, heavy fight. Him because he had lain 300 years in darkness and waited for it. Me because I had lain months in darkness and waited for it. We were 2 prisoners released into a ring, and we both knew one of us would not leave. Maybe neither of us. I remembered Maddox. You will be the biggest, meanest, loudest, he promised. Biggest, well, 4 meters is fine. Meanest, we will see. Loudest, now we will see. I did not need arms. I was a shell. 4 tons, reactor at the limit, 3 steps for the charge, my pistons fired. The paving stones cracked under my feet. I gained speed. 1 meter a second, 2, 3. For a dread that is fast, very fast, almost impossible. My reactor roared. The exhaust pipe spat a column of flame like rocket nozzles. 4 tons of rusty smoking oil bleeding orc metal hit Brother Edmund at full speed. Collision, a sound beyond what my brain could process. Absolute white noise. My hull crumpled. The front plate drove inward, pressing on the capsule with my brain. His hull too. Blue ceramite cracked like a shell. Both of us toppled, locked together, crushed, and rolled across the paving stones, breaking them. We lay in the wreckage. My only hand, the left claw, still gripped his throat. The saw did not work, jammed on a chunk of ceramite, but the claw squeezed. Hydraulics wheezed, pressure fell, but it squeezed. From his speaker came crackle, static, and through the static a voice. For the Emperor, quiet, old, tired. My claw squeezed harder. Something inside him cracked, something important. His optics, 2 blue fires, blinked and went out. Silence, the same as in the hangar. Black, dense, endless, only different. The hangar silence had been empty, dead, the silence of waiting. This was a full silence after thunder. A silence into which sound slowly poured like water into a bowl. A distant shout, maybe orc, maybe human, impossible to tell, metal scraping stone. My hull pressed into the paving, crushing rubble. Drops, something dripping. Oil or hydraulic fluid or promethium from the torn side. Drip, drip, drip. My reactor still worked. I heard it barely at the edge. A dull hum, like a heart that does not want to stop. Stubborn, stupid heart beating only because it has forgotten how to stop. The visor was dead. I saw nothing. Sound sensors worked at 10%. Everything was muffled as if through a pillow. Temperature sensors off, cheminalyzer off, hydraulics dead. The claw opened, or it had been torn off. I did not feel the left arm. I lay on my side perhaps, or on my back. Without the visor I could not know. Legs did not work, arms did not work, weapons did not work, the brain worked. Irony. The only thing an ordinary boy does not need, the only thing left. I thought of Blackfin of the yellow stinking swamp. Of Tucker One Ear who led us forward and shouted about Gork. Tucker died on Blackfin. A Goff knob split his head in two. He fell into the swamp and the sludge closed over him, and in a minute he was gone, as if he had never been. That is how orcs go, quickly, without trace, without grave. We do not bury our own. We move on. The dead are fertilizer. The living are weapons. I thought of Niles, the little grot in the little can. Remember, he said. Niles. I remembered. I would remember while my brain did not boil in this fluid or dry out in it. Niles. The first Kill-a-Can who asked me to say his name. I thought of Grimshaw, Painboy, butcher with golden hands. He cut away everything that made me an orc and gave me something else in return, something I still cannot name. Strength, curse, gift, all at once. I thought of my hands, the real green ones with dirt under the nails. The right one with the scar on the wrist, where a fighting squig bit me when I had only just crawled out of the ground. Small, angry, hungry. The left with the bitten little finger from a childhood fight. My hands. I miss them. Every day, every waking moment, every second in this dark tin, I miss them. Claws are not hands. Claws are tools. Hands are you. Brother Edmund, 300 years in a box. I had been a few months and I was already cracked, and he had endured 300 years. What is that like? Do they have prayers? Do they dream? Do they remember sun on the face, hands, legs, the taste of food? Or do they simply wait as I waited in the hangar only for 300 years? Maybe his faith held him. Maybe his emperor gave him what Gork and Mork do not give me, some warm silence with dreams and visions. Or maybe he too lay in the dark counting the beats of his reactor. 300 years. I would not survive 10. I killed him, or he killed me, or we killed each other. Hard to say when you are lying in a puddle of your own oil and the only thing working is a piece of meat inside a skull stuffed with needles. Sounds came closer, heavy footsteps, orc footsteps. Look, a dread, a voice far away like from another room. That is Brutus. Dead thing, no, still humming, hear it, humming. My reactor, its last turns. Call the mech, Maddox, Maddox, come here, your kin is broken. Maddox Sparkbite, the one who put me in here, the one who promised it would be like a womb, only iron. Light quick steps, the ring of tools. Oh, Maddox's voice close. He stands over me or beside me. Oh, you did something there, you really did something, Brutus. What did you do to him? That is a whole space marine dread. Did you wreck him? I tried to answer. From my speakers came wheeze and scrape. Silence. All right, no need to talk. He tapped my hull, a familiar sound. Hammer. I will patch you up, build you again. You will be better, bigger, meaner. I will put a rocket launcher on you, hear me? And 2 scorches instead of 1, and a proper visor, not red. Well, all right, red, but better. His voice floated away, or I floated away from it. Something inside my brain slowly went out like a coal breathing its last heat before becoming ash. The filters in my capsule. Did I hear them or no longer? Something chewed, something gurgled. Or maybe that was only my brain saying goodbye to itself. Concert. I wanted a concert. I got one. The scorches sang low, long, hot. The shooter chattered fast, furious, unstoppable. The claws struck heavy and rhythmic like hammers. And then the finale, silence. The silence that comes when the last note has faded and the hall holds still. I am an instrument. I always was. When I was a boy, a chopper in the boss' hand. When I became a dread, a whole orchestra in one hull. The scorcher is my voice. The shooter is my laughter, the claws are my fists, the reactor is my heart. Today I played loud, beautifully, fiercely, as only an orc can play, without notes, without rules, without plan, pure furious mad thunder, a symphony of ruin. If someone asks, and no one will because orcs do not ask such things, which was better, life with hands and legs or life in a can, I do not know what to answer. With hands I was no one. Boy number 147 in mob number 14. One green face in a sea of green faces. I ran, roared, swung a choppa. If I had been killed, no one would have noticed. Not even the knob would have remembered my name. In the can I am Brutus Ironside. 4 meters, 4 tons, 4 arms. The only Deff Dread of the bad moons in the wog of Harlan Skullbox. They know me. They fear me. When I enter battle, the ground shakes and enemies see their own death before it reaches them. But between battles I am a piece of meat walled up alive, talking to myself in the dark and waiting for the sound of a hammer like mercy. So there is no better answer. The question is stupid. The orc answer is right. The sound of the reactor became quieter, quieter still, barely heard. Maddox was doing something outside, knocking, turning, swearing. I heard him far away through a wall of cotton winding around my brain, layer by layer. Maybe he would repair me. Maybe I would wake again in the hangar, in darkness, in silence, and wait. And a grot would again chew mushrooms on my shoulder, and I would again wait for the sound of the hammer. Or maybe not. Maybe this time the darkness would stay. Forever. Real darkness. Without waiting, without hunger, without dull, aching longing for a sound. I would not mind because the last thing I heard was the most beautiful music of my life. The thunder of my hull striking an enemy, the scream of the saw biting into alien armor, the crunch, the crack, the roar, and silence. Perfect silence. The darkness came soft and warm like oil seeping from armor joints. I liked it. My reactor fell silent. The last hum, long and drawn out, faded like the final note dissolving in air. Dark, warm, quiet, good. Bam, a hammer blow on the hull, heavy, familiar. Bam again. Brutus, a distant hoarse dear voice. Brutus, you lazy rusty can, wake up. I put a new arm on you, 2 new arms and a rocket launcher. Get up. Something clicked deep inside, behind ribs that did not exist. Warmth, heat, reactor. Red light. The visor slit lit up. The world was red, muddy, beautiful. Maddox stood before me, small, dirty, grinning with golden teeth, hammer on his shoulder. Well then, he said, ready for the next concert. From my speakers came a wheeze, a scrape, and then a voice. My voice, rattling, broken, monstrous. Make it louder. Maddox laughed and struck my leg with the hammer. Right you are, Ironside, right you are. I took a step, the floor cracked, the world trembled, the music began again.